guys, it's Julia. So today's video is going to be a huge roundup of all the dupes in my collection that I want to show you guys. So in this video, I've kind of done a roundup of all the dupes I have in my collection for high-end and luxury items. And when I say luxury items, I mean like really expensive brands. So we got Natasha Denona, Charlotte Tilbury, McGrath. Some of my favorite products from those brands are dupes. So I was able to find a lot of great dupes in my collection that I want to share with you guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's just a way for you to find some good options that are a little bit more affordable if you don't want to splurge out a ton of money on the high-end items. And I really enjoy watching dupe videos myself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun finding all these things in my collection. Some of these I didn't even know I had. I didn't even know that these were dupes until I really just looked at them side by side and I was like, wow. They are very, very similar. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and let's get right into this. Some of these are color dupes, some of them are formula dupes. Not all the dupe items are necessarily like drugstore, especially for the like super luxury items. Some of them are like high-end dupes for a luxury priced item, but everything is a little bit cheaper, a little bit more cost effective, and they're all very similar. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and let's get right into it. As always, the full makeup details of what I'm wearing on my face will be listed in the description box down below. I will have the link to the exact Instagram post with this makeup look. So yeah, let's just start this video off with a bang and start with my favorite dupe that I found. So you guys know that I am in love with my McGrath Mothership palette. I have the Mothership 2 in Sublime, so these are the colors inside there. Obviously this is like right up my alley. You've got some duochrome, you've got the green, you've got this beautiful like gold pigment here and the rose gold. All these colors are stunning and the mattes are like probably one of my favorite formulas. Just in general, this eyeshadow palette houses my favorite eyeshadow formula of all time. I like gush about this McGrath palette in every video that I talk about it, and I love this one, but I did find you guys a really great affordable dupe. So the dupe I found for you guys was actually the Anastasia Beverly Hills Prism palette. I did not initially think that these would be dupes, but when I really held them side by side and compared a lot of the colors in here, I did find dupes for the key colors in here. So obviously, in the McGrath palette, we have this beautiful green pigment here. This is a duochrome green, so it has a really nice green and black shift. In the Prism palette, the shade here called Throne is exactly the same thing. It's a very shimmery green foiled shadow, but I did find that this does have a nice black base. Very similar effect on the eyes. The other key shade that I found duped in here was this gold pigment. This is one of McGrath's pigment formulas, like a shimmer pigment. So if you get it wet, it's literally like liquid gold on the eyes. It's so stunning, and it's probably my favorite color in my collection. The shade here in the Prism palette called Pyramid is a great dupe for that one. It's not the same formula by any means. I definitely think the McGrath formula is a step above, which is kind of saying something because you guys know I love the Anastasia formula. But the shimmer shade in here, it's very foiled, very glittery. It's not quite as glittery as the McGrath one, but it still has a very similar effect, especially if you go in with a wet brush. So these are very similar colors and they're both very nice true gold. In the McGrath palette, you have two matte shades. You have the black and you have the dark brown. These ones are extremely blendable and very pigmented, and I love them both. In the Prism palette, you also have a dark brown here called Parallel. This one is very blendable and pigmented, not to the level of the McGrath, of course, but still very, very good. And then the black here called Obsidian is actually one of my favorite blacks in my collection. Obviously, the pan size in this palette is not quite as big as a McGrath palette, but still. The McGrath palette also has this one here. It's like a duochrome kind of whitish pink shade. It's kind of like an opalescent highlighter. And this is definitely not duped in the Prism palette. I do think that the shade Cube from the Subculture palette is very similar to this one, so if you do have that, you can get it. But honestly, if you get like a iridescent, like kind of pink white duochrome highlighter, that'll have a very similar effect. This is a very sheer shade, and it's absolutely stunning if you wet your brush with it. I do think it's a very unique color, but you can still get a very similar effect with other products. I do think the most notable shades in this palette here are duped in the Prism palette. So obviously, the rest of the shades in here are pretty simple. These are like satiny shades, and I think you can find pretty good dupes for them in like other formulas of shadows that are a lot cheaper. So obviously I don't think this is an exact dupe. It doesn't have every single color in here. I do think these are pretty good dupes in my opinion. I use them both. I love them both. Definitely the McGrath one is still my favorite, but I do think the Prism palette is a really good more affordable option. If you're not wanting to spend $125, you can spend $42 and get some very similar colors that are still really beautiful. So I have been raving the house down about the Anastasia Beverly Hills Emerald highlighter, and this is probably my favorite highlighter in my collection. As you can see, it's a really nice light gold kind of champagne color. And honestly, I don't think there's any highlighter that I have that exactly dupes this one. I'm pretty picky with dupes. It has to be within like 95% of the similar range, otherwise it's just not a dupe for me. So I was having a really hard time finding a really comparable thing to recommend to you guys because this is $28, which is a little bit expensive for one highlighter. And I heard some people comparing it to Champagne Pop. I don't think it's any way similar to Champagne Pop. Champagne Pop has a very peachy shift, whereas this one is really a true gold champagne shift. So I do not think it's similar to Champagne Pop by Becca. So this is my favorite highlighter. I don't think anything I have in my collection remotely compares to the quality of this one, but I did find a pretty decent color dupe. So the color dupe I found for you guys was the Wet n Wild Mega Glow Highlighting Gold Bar. In the pan, they actually look very similar. Obviously, you're not getting anywhere close to the packaging. The packaging on this Anastasia highlighter is amazing. It's probably one of my favorite packagings for any release that's been released lately, so I really do enjoy this highlighter. But I think if you're not willing to spend $28 on one highlighter, you can spend $5 and get this one. It's a really beautiful intensity highlighter as well. It's very soft and it doesn't have a lot of glitter particles in it, so I do think that the color is very similar, and once it's on the cheekbones, honestly, it's hard to tell the difference. So if you're really wanting to get a very similar effect, a nice like soft gold highlighter, I would recommend going for this one. I don't think it's available online anymore, but I have seen it a lot in stores. So I think if you're wanting to get this one, your best bet is to go into like a Walgreens or a Rite Aid and find this one. It's a really beautiful highlighter, and I know that they bring this out every now and then. I will include swatches on screen so you can see how similar they look to each other, but I think this is probably the closest dupe I could find for the Anastasia Beverly Hills and Reezy highlighter, and they're both really great products. I do prefer this one, but if you don't want to spend $28, you can spend $5. So one of my favorite summer foundations and like very lightweight foundations is the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea Water Foundation. This one is amazing. It has like medium to full coverage, so it's very buildable on the skin. It feels very lightweight because it is a water foundation, and it's very like drippy and liquidy. So I think this is great if you don't want to feel like you have a ton of makeup on your face, but you still want a good amount of coverage. And I love this one. It's actually one of the few foundations from Tarte. I think probably the only foundation from Tarte that has like a slightly decent shade range. Obviously though, Tarte is a very high-end brand, and this comes with a pretty hefty price tag. So if you don't want to spend, I believe it's like $39 on this foundation, the Catrice HD Liquid Coverage Foundation is a great dupe for it. This is only $13. It's available at Ulta. This one is also a liquid drop foundation. It's a very similar finish as well. This one is also full coverage. I wouldn't say it's as light coverage as this one. This one's more medium to full coverage, and it's more buildable. This one is full coverage right out the gate, so if you're wanting a little bit sheerer of a foundation, just go in with a little bit less. It's also very mattifying, which I find is very interesting for a liquid foundation like this, because I assume since it's a water-based foundation, it would be like a little dewier, but no, it's very matte when it dries down. And I think these are both very similar on the skin. They last very long on the face, and they just look so good throughout the day. I love this one. It's my favorite drugstore foundation, and I reach for them pretty equally. Alright, so this is actually a pretty commonly known dupe. I would say that most people know about this one, but I still wanted to share it on my channel because I do find these to be very similar. So these are the Stila Magnificent Metals Glitter and Glow Liquid Eyeshadows. This is one of my favorite ways to use glitter. It's so easy because it's a nice like liquid glitter eyeshadow. It's super shimmery, so it can get that nice foiled look, but you really don't have to fuss with using a loose glitter. So it's really a lot less messy, it's very clean and very easy. But a great dupe for this one because this is $24, which is crazy for like a little thing like this. That's super expensive, and I think $18 would be a lot more reasonable of a price for these. But if you're not wanting to spend the $24, I think the ColourPop Supernova Shadows are a great dupe. They actually have a really nice extensive shade range in both of these, so they really did expand the colors, so you have a lot of options for what glitters you'd like to use. This one is my favorite. It's called Moonlit. It's like a purple-pink duochrome, and it looks so beautiful layered on top of other shadows. These are both very glittery, so they will give you that nice like glitter effect without having to fuss with loose glitter. The only thing I would say is that the ColourPop ones are a little bit more flaky, like they can tend to flake out throughout the day. So I would recommend actually taking this with you for touch-ups throughout the day. It's not too hard. I don't really mind it, especially because it's only $7. The Stila ones don't do that to me, so I would say this one is definitely a little bit better quality, but still you can get a very similar effect, and if you find more colors that you would like in the ColourPop ones, I would definitely recommend picking these up. Hourglass is one of my favorite brands, and I love their ambient lighting powders. I actually don't have the ambient lighting palette with me right now. I gave it to a friend for now, but I do have a great dupe for those if you don't want to spend a ton of money, and this one is actually from e.l.f., so I was really excited about this one. This is the e.l.f. Total Face Palette. I think the powders in here are very similar in texture to what is in the Hourglass formula. They're very soft and buildable. You don't need to have like a ton of pigmentation on first shock because you can really just build them up, and they just look so beautiful on the skin. So I think these are very similar in formula and texture to the Hourglass formula. The thing that really tipped me off for this being a dupe for the Hourglass powders was actually this highlighter down here. This is definitely not a highlighter on me. It's very like not shiny at all. It honestly looks like a powder. So I actually thought this was very similar to the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Powders. I think if you want to use this as an all over face like pressed powder, it looks beautiful on the skin. If you want to use this all over the face as like a nice Hourglass type pressed powder, it looks beautiful on the skin. It just creates a nice luminous effect, and that's exactly what the Hourglass powders do. So I think this is a great dupe, and this entire palette is only $8, whereas one Hourglass powder is like, it's in the $40 range, I think. It's either in the $30 or $40 range, and that's crazy for a tiny pressed powder. So I think this is an amazing dupe. I'm very happy that I have this in my collection, and I reach for this often. So this one's another well-known dupe. I think this is probably the only other like super well-known dupe that I have in my collection. The rest of the dupes in here are ones that I've actually like never heard of before on YouTube, but this one, everyone's been talking about it. It is the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, and I think a great dupe for this one is actually the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define. In my last video, I said that this is actually not like 100% of a dupe. I would say that this is kind of like the Urban Decay Naked Skin Concealer and the Tarte Shape Tape combined, but I'd say it's more similar to the Tarte Shape Tape than it is the Urban Decay, if that makes sense. But still, I think this is probably the best drugstore dupe for the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer that I've ever found. I do think that the applicators are very similar. Both the formulas are very full coverage, they blend out very well. Yeah, I really enjoy both these concealers. I've kind of been veering away from Tarte Shape Tape and looking for more options just to try and diversify my concealer repertoire. So I've really been enjoying the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define. I think it's a great drugstore option. This is only $7. It can be found in most Ultas, and this is $27. So there's a $20 price difference, and despite the slight consistency difference, I do think this is an amazing concealer. It's very full coverage, not quite as full coverage, but still extremely full coverage. So both of these are amazing concealers, and I would say this is probably the best dupe for Shape Tape that I've found. I'm pretty ride or die for Anastasia's brow products. She's pretty much the only brand that I use every single day for my brow products. I love the Dip Brow, I love the Brow Wiz, and I really do love the Clear Brow Gel, but this became pretty irrelevant to me once I started trying the e.l.f. Clear Brow Gel and Mascara. It's a double-sided like clear brow gel, and it has two different brushes. So one side says it's like for your eyelashes. I just use it for my eyebrows. It's the same formula with a different brush, and it doesn't really matter. And it's only $2, whereas the Anastasia one is $20. So you're gonna save a lot of money if you're buying this one, especially because I use it every day. I do go through the brow gel pretty quickly. So I do think that the Anastasia one holds your eyebrows a lot better throughout the day. This one is not quite as strong, but still do purchase the Brow Wiz and the Dip Brow because those are honestly the best brow products. But in terms of holding my brows in place, I think the e.l.f. one does a great job, so I just buy this one now. So I actually did a video with the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes palette, duping it with the palette that I'm going to mention right now, and this is one of my favorite palettes in my collection. It's a beautiful, like, warm-toned color scheme. One of the best palettes I've ever tried from Too Faced in terms of formula, so I really do enjoy this palette, and oh, it smells so good. But if you don't want to spend $45 on this one, the e.l.f. Matte for Matte 2 in Summer Breeze is very, very similar. And I know it might not look exactly similar, but trust me, if you watch the video, I did do swatches side by side with all the different color comparisons, and it's very, very similar, and they both perform beautifully on the eyes. These are both 100% matte. You're getting a lot of the really nice peachy transition shades, and you also do get some nice warm browns in here. So I think the color schemes of these are very similar. Honestly, the only thing you're really missing out on is the shade here called Peach Sangria. I think could easily be duped by the ColourPop shade, I think it's called Stay Golden. You can honestly just go buy a single shade for $5 and still get this palette. It's $10 and this one is $45. So I would actually recommend to go watch the video I did duping these together. I think they're very, very similar. Obviously with this palette here, you're not getting the peach scent. So if that's something you want, I would say the Too Faced one definitely has a leg up. But if you don't want the peach scent, I would say get the e.l.f. one because it's very, very similar in color scheme. So I really enjoy both these palettes. I do reach for this one more often just because I do like the quality of this a little better, but still, this is probably one of the best drugstore eyeshadow palettes I've ever tried. I think the formula on this one is amazing, especially for only $10, and you're actually getting 10 shades in here, so it's $1 a shade. I think it's a great deal. Alright, so I have another Pat McGrath dupe, and I talk about this lipstick all the time. It is my favorite lipstick in my collection. This is the Pat McGrath Matte Trans Lipstick in the shade Omi. It is just the most beautiful, like, pinky toned nude. I use this all the time. I'm wearing this to prom. It's just my favorite, like, pink lipstick color. It's so beautiful, and then the formula is amazing. I think Pat McGrath's lipstick formula is unrivaled in my opinion. It's extremely matte. It stays on all day throughout, like, anything, kissing, eating, drinking, whatever. It's extremely pigmented. It's just very easy to work with, and it's my favorite formula. I do think that the color Omi is very unique. It has a certain balance of pinkness to it, but still is very neutral, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a mauve-toned neutral pink. I did find a really good color dupe. This is the ColourPop Candy Paint Matte X Lippy Sticks. And I would say that these are very, very similar. I'd say it's probably like a 0.5 margin of error. This one does have a little bit more nude to it, whereas the Pat McGrath has a little bit more pink. But I think they're very, very similar. Obviously, the formula cannot compare. The Matte X formula is very matte and very pigmented. It glides on really nicely. I do think it's a great formula, but the Pat McGrath one lasts a bit longer and it just feels more comfortable throughout the day. So I genuinely do enjoy both lipsticks and I wear them very often. Pat McGrath is obviously my favorite of the two, but I do think that they're very similar. And for $38, you are getting a luxury experience. Obviously, the packaging is beautiful and it's just a very luxurious feeling lipstick. But the ColourPop one is $5.50. I do think it's a great dupe and they're very, very similar colors. So I've been reaching for both of these very often. I think they're beautiful shades and very, very similar as well. So I will show swatches as well. I think they're amazing dupes and as you can see, they're pretty similar. Now I'm going to mention the ColourPop Matte X Lippy Sticks again. I'm not mentioning any particular color, I just think the formula is very similar to another formula. So this is the Marc Jacobs Liquid Lip Crayon, and I was very intrigued by this. They marketed it as a liquid lipstick in a crayon form, and I'm actually very shocked to say that it is like a liquid lipstick. It feels like you're applying a liquid lipstick, but it's literally like a lip crayon. This shade is called Night Mauves, so it's really, really pretty. It's like a nice pink toned mauve-y shade. And I really do enjoy this formula, but the first time I tried it on, I was like, this feels very similar. It kind of tastes similar as well. And I was like, what is that? I definitely have something in my collection that's very similar to this one. It took me a while to realize it, but the ColourPop Lippy Sticks Matte X formula is extremely similar to this one. So if you have both of these, I just invite you to smell them side by side. It might seem kind of weird, but that was the first thing that tipped me off. I was like, these have very similar ingredients in them. And then I applied them side by side just to feel the texture, and I was like, wow. This feels like I'm applying literally the same thing. So both of them are very nice matte formulas. They dry down very quickly and they stay on for a very nice long time. So I think these are amazing, amazing formulas. They're very, very similar. And I think you'll be able to find pretty much every color from the Marc Jacobs collection in the ColourPop formula. So if you're not wanting to spend, I think it's like $26 on one lip crayon, which is crazy expensive for a lipstick, I think the ColourPop Matte X formula is really amazing. Obviously, I just mentioned it twice in this video. I do think it's a great formula. So this is a formula dupe. For the Pat McGrath, it's a color dupe. So very different, but I do think that they're great dupes. This is the MAC Glitter in the shade Gold. It's the only MAC product I still have in my collection. MAC is obviously not cruelty-free, so I do not purchase from them, but I did get this as a present, and I'm just trying to use it up because it is my favorite glitter in my collection. It's just such a beautiful, like, loose gold glitter, and I wanted to find something that would be a good comparable dupe. The perfect dupe that I found was the JCat Beauty Rockin' the Night Sparkling Powder in, I believe this is the shade Gatsby's Gold. So you're probably thinking, it's just a gold glitter. How hard can it be to find a dupe? But the MAC glitters are very unique to me because I find that the size of the glitters, first of all, are very, very fine. It's hard to find something that's exactly the same kind of undertone as these and also the same size and shape. Because the MAC glitter, the particles are so small, I wanted to find something that has a very similar texture, and the closest thing I could find to that was the JCat Beauty ones. This one does not have a stopper, so it's a lot more messy than the MAC glitters. It's a lot more easy to use and a little bit more user-friendly. And if you're really like kind of sensitive to messes like I am, I think you'll probably like be a little bit ticked off with this one. But again, the price difference is staggering, and also this is cruelty-free while this is not. So I do think these are very, very similar. They look pretty much the same on the eyes. $4.50 on Ulta.com, and this one, I don't remember how much this is. It's probably like around the $20 range. I do like them both. I do love the MAC glitter, but I'm not going to be repurchasing this, and I will just keep repurchasing the JCat ones because they are very good. Alright, so here I have the Charlotte Tilbury Luxury Palette in the shade Vintage Vamp. So this is just a little quad. I think calling it a luxury palette is kind of an overstatement because it's 4 shades. It's a quad. It's not a palette. This is a very beautiful color scheme, and I think it's very true to what Charlotte Tilbury tries to emulate in all her makeup products. It's very classic. You're not going to be able to get like super elaborate like Instagram style looks unless you try really hard, but I do think the colors in here are beautiful. But this palette is $50 for 4 eyeshadow shades. You're getting very little product in here, and it's just crazy expensive. I don't think the quality is worth the price for what you're paying. So I wanted to find a good dupe for this one, and obviously it's not the hardest palette to dupe. You have very simple colors in here, but when I kind of looked at the colors more closely, I realized the 2 burgundy shades in here, they have very particular undertones. So this one is more of a purple undertone and this one has more of a red undertone. So I was thinking to myself, in my collection, what do I have that has a bunch of burgundy shades with different undertones? And then I realized the Morphe 25B palette is very, very similar. So here's the two color schemes, and as you can see, very similar. This one is obviously a palette full of very neutral colors, but the reason I actually bought this palette is because of all the burgundy shades in here. So this burgundy up here, deep kind of rich, almost purple toned burgundy, and it's very similar to this one here. I think this one is actually a lot better quality and it stays longer on the eyes, whereas this one kind of fades throughout the day. So that's already a +1 for the Morphe palette. And the shade right below it, this one here, it's also a burgundy, but this one has more of a kind of reddish burnt base, and I think it's very similar to this burgundy here. So that's the two mattes already duped. You have a beautiful pink champagne shade, and I did mention that this is very similar to the Anastasia shade Pink Champagne. So honestly, you could buy this Morphe palette and the Anastasia Pink Champagne shade and still be below the price point of this. There are 6 shimmer shades in here, and I think one of these two like pink champagne shades could be very similar on the eyes. And then obviously there's this gold glitter like topper here. This one is not very opaque, it's a very sheer wash of glitter, and the Morphe shimmers in here are actually really opaque. I don't find them to be like sheer at all. They're very pigmented and beautiful on the eyes. So you could go for this gold glitter shade here. It's not going to be quite as like sheer on the eyes, but I'd actually prefer it to be more pigmented. So I think that the Morphe palette is an amazing and cost-effective dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury one. This is $50 and then this palette is $17. This one has a lot more colors. Obviously you're getting 25 shades, whereas this one has 4. So you're obviously getting a lot more product, I think even better quality, and very similar colors. So if you've really been lusting over the color scheme, I would say just skip this one. Honestly, the quality is not worth the exorbitant price. So just save your money for a different Charlotte Tilbury product. I do enjoy her Magic Foundation and a lot of her complexion products. I'm not a huge fan of the eyeshadows. Obviously, the NARS face products are very, very popular. The NARS Orgasm Blush and the Laguna Bronzer are 2 cult favorites. So a perfect dupe for Orgasm is actually from e.l.f. Cosmetics. This is the Contouring Blush and Bronzer. And in here, obviously this is like banged up, I've used this a ton. In here you have a blush and bronzer duo, and this is the shade, I want to say St. Lucia. I don't really remember the shade combination. I will list it above or below in the description box. But in here you have a very nice peachy tone blush with some gold flecks in it. So this really reminds me of the NARS Orgasm shade. It looks beautiful on the face. And honestly, I did go to Sephora. I tried on Orgasm on one side while wearing this one on the other side, and it looked pretty much the same, so you really can't tell the difference. And then the bronzer over here, I think it's very similar to Laguna. It's a nice like kind of deep chocolatey brown shade. It has a nice warmth to it and it has some gold flecks in there as well. So these are very similar to the NARS Orgasm Blush and Laguna Bronzer. I do think that the rest of the e.l.f. compacts are very similar. So this one is actually the Fiji Matte Duo. So these ones are actually matte shades, whereas the other ones were shimmers. Really nice soft formula. And then obviously the packaging is very similar to NARS. It's kind of a dead ringer. So I do think these are very similar, and for $4, and honestly for $4, I would just recommend this one. It's a lot better. You're getting more product and better value, and obviously NARS is not cruelty free. e.l.f. is 100% vegan and cruelty free, so I would definitely recommend these over NARS any day. Alright, so my final dupe for this video is probably one of the most exciting ones in this video besides the Pat McGrath palette, but it is the new Natasha Denona Tropic palette. So I actually did have the privilege of trying out that palette. My friend, who is a fellow makeup artist, she actually let me try out her palette and try and make my own look with it, because I was very hesitant about that palette. I definitely knew that I did not want to go and buy it and not like the quality, so she was kind enough to let me try it out myself, and I did get a feel for the quality of the palette. I did get to see how the shadows lasted throughout the day and how they performed. So my overall review of that palette was I liked it. It was a good quality palette. It performed nicely on the eyes. Am I gonna go spend $129 on my own palette? Definitely not. I think while the quality was good, it's not as good as the typical Natasha Denona formula, and it just wasn't worth $129. So I'm not going to be buying that palette personally. I do really appreciate the fact that she let me use her eyeshadow palette, and I think the look I came up with was really fun. It was very easy to work with, and it just came out really nicely. So I did like the palette. It performed really well. The quality was not the problem. I just think the quality was not worth the exorbitant price. I really wish that Natasha had stuck with her old formula. I think that is an amazing formula, but she is experimenting with a new formula, and I just don't really like it that much. So I'm not going to be buying the Tropic palette for myself. But through using the palette and trying it out myself, I was able to realize that the colors in there are very similar to something I already have and I already love, and that is the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette. So as I studied the Tropic palette, I did realize that, wow. So the first 2 rows are basically just warm tone neutrals, and the first 3 rows in the Jaclyn palette are also basically just warm tone neutrals. I'm not saying that it's exact shade dupes for every single shade in the Tropic palette. I do think that there's some beautiful like salmon colors and like pinky tone colors that are not exactly the same in here, but you can still get a very similar look. And then the last row of the palette was really what drew me into the palette at the first like glance. I was like, wow, those are beautiful colors. I really wish that she would just release the bottom row as like one of those 5-pan palettes, because I would buy the heck out of that. Colorful shades in here, the blues and the purples and the greens, are very similar to what's in that row. So you have the kind of teal blue matte, which is very similar to what's in the Tropic palette. You have the like light blue shimmer, which is also very similar to what's in the Tropic palette. You even have the light green shimmer, and then the shade Tiger Lily that was really drawing me into the Tropic palette is like a nice blue cerulean kind of shimmery shade, and the shade Twerk in here is very similar to that. The only thing you're really lacking is that nice beautiful lavender shade. I don't remember what it was called, but it's a beautiful shade and it performed very well in the eyes. But I do think you could find a good single shadow for that lavender shade, and you don't have to spend $129 on that one palette. The Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette is only $38. I think the quality of this one is amazing. I've never had any problems with the quality of this palette, whereas the Natasha palette, I think it's good quality, don't get me wrong. I just don't think the quality is living up to the $129 name, whereas the old formula of Natasha did really live up to that price. So I would honestly just say go for the Morphe Jaclyn Hill. I'm very happy with this palette, and I think that I can honestly recreate the look that I made or any of the other looks that I've seen on social media with this palette. So I'm very happy with this palette. I do think it's a great dupe, and most people actually have this palette already, so I would just say stick with this one. It's just not worth it. Alright guys, so that concludes my video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun finding amazing dupes in my collection. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below, what are some of your favorite dupes in your collection? What are some things that you've found? I really want to know, because I love trying out dupes, I love being able to save money, and I love being able to help my subscribers save money. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear what you guys have in your collection that you would consider to be a dupe. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel, make sure you're following me on Instagram, and yeah, I think that concludes the video. So if you made it to the very end, I love you so much. Thank you very much for watching my channel. Bye.